The human subclass has access to a unique category of consumables known as stimulants. They are an exceptional category of items that have been extremely popular with the human player base for multiple expansion cycles. They are normally best for players looking for a temporary buff to complete an objective that they would normally find difficult with their base stats. Almost all stimulant items provide the alert status effect for a set duration, and then trigger the exhausted status effect immediately after the buff expires. This is not true for all stimulants though. There are over 16 stimulant items within the game, and I cannot fit all of them in the video, so I'm going to go over the popular ones. Hopefully looking at this, you can gauge whether or not you want to pick up or ignore the next stimulant item you come across during your gameplay. You need to be really careful while taking these items. Almost all stimulant type items make you roll a constitution check each time you take it, failing which will give you a permanent effect called Addicted. The effects of addiction differ for each item like in Fallout, and I will try to cover them as I go over each item. If you keep using too much of a single stimulant item, you will also gain the stim fatigue trait, which will periodically lower the intensity of the buffs provided by that item by 1%. Also, some of the items under this category are deemed as contraband in most servers, which can result in your character gaining wanted levels if you're scanned by a police NPC. So anyways, I'm going to start at the bottom of the tier list and then go up from there. At the bottom of F tier, we have cocaine. Cocaine is a contraband rare tier item that triggers the alert status effect and gives it a 200% buff for up to 30 minutes in game. It's also extremely difficult to obtain this item if you cannot craft it yourself. In most servers, this item is a major contraband, and you would get a 3-star wanted level at least if you get scanned by a police NPC. This item provides you some unique gameplay buffs. It increases your charisma significantly and also increases NPC dialogue speed by 2 times, allowing you to flash through quest lines before the effect of the item ends. Once the effects end, this item uniquely also triggers the paranoia status effect along with exhausted. This will cause hostile markers to appear on your radar and your minimap, even if there are actually no hostile NPCs around you. Furthermore, you will also gain reduced XP until your other debuffs wear off. All of this, combined with the high cost to obtain this item, it's basically a noob trap. And that is before considering the fact that they can also cause an instant game over if used too much. I would truly not recommend any human player to use this item. It's utter garbage and earns its spot rightfully at the bottom of F tier. Next up, also in F tier, we have methamphetamine. This is another contraband item in most servers. However, unlike the previous item, it does not require a lot of investment into crafting skill tree to unlock it. Along with the alert status effect, this item also has a unique buff, which gives the user a 25% damage reduction for around 8 hours in-game. However, once the effect ends, it automatically procs both the exhausted status effect and the come down status effect. The latter reduces all your base stats by 50% for up to 72 hours, and furthermore, you will not be able to sleep to skip through all of the duration of these debuffs. The item also requires you to pass a very high constitution check for addiction, which will give you a 15% reduction to all your stats and also reduces your XP rewards if the consumable effects are not active. Addiction to this item also causes your character to start taking tick damage over time, draining your character's HP and causing visible degradation.
You look worse than I feel.
Using too much of this item in short succession can trigger an in-game event called Heart Attack, which will result in an instant game over. While the unique damage reduction buffs can be useful in some situations, especially combat encounters, the risk of an instant game over earns this item a solid spot in F tier. Moving on to D tier, we have the herbal stimulants, items such as ginseng and green tea. These items don't trigger the alert status effect like the other stimulants, but gives a very minor buff to some of your stats associated with these effects. Because of this, your character will not proc exhausted when the buffs end. This is really good for casual players, because they don't have to plan their quests around exhaustion, but these items are completely unviable in competitive play, earning their spot in D tier. Next up, we have amphetamines. Amphetamines trigger the alert status effect for up to 12 hours, and also buffs your strength, dexterity, and charisma. Uniquely, they also freeze your hunger and sleep meters. Amphetamines spawn in the game world across 2 variants, the common variant, which you can normally gain through crafting or a dealer NPC, and the rare variant, which you can only purchase from a psychiatrist NPC. The common variant works the same as the rare variant, but has a 10% chance of triggering a random effect on your character. Once the buffs end, the item triggers the exhausted status effect, and also another effect called the fog. This further reduces your perception stat, and also prevents you from gaining any XP for a few hours. Unlike the F tier items, These effects can normally be removed after completing a long rest. The item is typically considered a contraband in most servers. However, you can get around the wanted level gain by obtaining a prescription for it. Long-term use of this item can cause permanent stat losses and reduce max HP to the player, making it a solid B tier option. If you've started the game with the ADHD background trait, however, this item works completely differently for you. I'd call it an A tier pick, because it completely negates most of the passive debuffs you gain from the trait, turning your character very overpowered for the duration of the consumable. The only reason this item is not an S tier for ADHD players is because once the buffs end, you will not be able to long rest like most human players and will have to wait out the fog to fully end before you can gain XP or long rest. Moving on to A tier, we have an item that was widely regarded as S tier until recent revelations from data miners. It is none other than nicotine. Unlike any other stimulant type item, nicotine is a very short acting buff and is stackable. It spawns into the game world in so many different variants like cigarettes, pouches, and vapes. These items trigger the alert status effect for a variable duration between 2 and 15 minutes, depending on the type of item you consume. It provides a minuscule buff to your dexterity as well, increasing your attack speed, meaning you can also write and type quicker while under the influence. As the alert buffs are minuscule, the exhausted effect triggered by nicotine is also minuscule, meaning it will not significantly impair your gameplay once the buffs wear off, unlike most other stimulants. Nicotine also reduces your stealth stat during consumption, allowing for you to be easily spotted during combat encounters. The reason nicotine is an A tier and not higher is thanks to the diligent efforts of data miners, who have established that it has the highest constitution check for triggering addiction in the game. I'd like to take a moment here to discuss how the addiction mechanic works in-game. Each time you use a stimulant consumable, you will have to roll a d20 based on your constitution to see if your character will proc the addiction status. If you use a stimulant item before its effects have fully worn off, you will have an increased probability to proc addiction. Once you've procced addiction to a specific stimulant on your character, the buffs you receive from it will be reduced by 50%, and your base stats relating to the alert status effect will be reduced by 20% if the consumable effects are not active. Your character will also gain a hidden addiction meter which starts to fill up as you keep using the consumable. Once it fills to max, you will no longer gain any buffs from the consumable. Instead, it would only clear the stat penalties you've gained due to the addiction modifier, and allows you to return to your base stats while the consumable is active. Due to the spammable nature of nicotine, it's extremely easy to get addicted to this consumable. Variants such as vapes and pouches allow you to use nicotine in quick succession to extend the overall buff duration. This can make your character proc addiction and fill up the meter very quickly. To remove this effect, you will either have to go through the Cold Turkey questline, which will have you survive for around 30 in-game days with massive stat penalties, or you will have to pay and access the Rehab questline. Yes, it is a pay-to-win mechanic, and yes, it sucks. Moving on to S tier, at the lower end we have modafinil, the only stimulant item in the game from the epic rarity. It works uniquely because it gives you the full alert status effect while not triggering the associated exhausted at the end of its buffs. It also fully freezes your sleep meter for up to 15 hours and locks your character from performing any animations associated with the sleep meter, like yawning. It does not make your character's screen to shake during the duration of the buffs like other stimulants, making it an ideal choice for players going through the pilot questline. It also does not cause the stim fatigue trait like the other stimulants, and does not make you roll a constitution check for addiction. Instead, you will have to roll a constitution check to determine whether or not you'll be forced into the diarrhea side quest. It's not marked as contraband, but it can only be traded from a pharmacist or a doctor NPC, making it more difficult to access than other common stimulants. The only downside you receive when the buffs end is that your character may enter an immediate sleep state the moment your buffs wear off, so you may want to keep a constant eye on the timer next to your health bar. At the top of S tier, we have caffeine, an item that's used by around 64% of the human player base around the game world on a daily basis. It has the best price to performance ratio, providing your character ample buffs with minimal repercussions. It is also very easy to craft, and you can unlock the recipe after investing as little as 1 point into the crafting skill tree. Caffeine gives you the alert status effect for up to 5 hours and also gives you +5 dexterity. Once the effects end, you gain the exhausted status effect for up to 3 hours or until you use a little more caffeine again. You also gain reduced movement speed during this duration. Caffeine also gives you an accuracy penalty with ranged weapons if you use more than a few charges at a time. The best part about caffeine, and the reason it is at the top of the S tier, is not merely due to the stat boosts that you get. It's a very versatile item that can be used in crafting to modify its effects. For instance, you can combine L-theanine with caffeine, into green tea or matcha to completely remove the accuracy penalty you gain from it. You can also combine caffeine with fibrous food consumables such as porridge to gain a prolonged alertness status effect and not auto-proc exhausted after. Caffeine also synergizes really well with other items that can buff your character. Combining caffeine with sugar can give you increased movement speed for up to 15 minutes in-game. Caffeine can also stack with the buffs provided by creatine, further increasing your max stamina and strength. Caffeine also stacks with the buffs provided by nicotine, giving you a double alertness status effect. They also synergize to give you additional movement speed. This, however, needs to be used with caution, because your character's thirst meter starts to drain twice as fast. The versatility of caffeine makes it a great choice for both casual and competitive players. It has a very low crafting requirement, is extremely inexpensive to trade, and can be modified and synergized by high-level players to gain more specific buffs, placing it at the top of the S tier. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.